House Stark is in the most unique position on the Game of Thrones board game. They have the ability to occupy so many territories early in the game without fear of retaliation from the other houses of Westeros. As a result, Stark is very often able to capture and farm so many resources. Stark only starts the game with one barrel, meaning they don't have a lot of supply. But in the mid-game, after they occupy all of these territories, Stark alone, just holding the north, gives it the most potential for any of the houses. And that is why House Stark is so powerful in the mid to late game. And one piece, one footman, does not count as an army. So realistically speaking, you could have as many of these footmen as you can possibly have around the board, occupying territories one by one by one. House Stark very often is wise to occupy some of the territories in the Vale, because once they get their supplies up, they will be able to field some of the most massive armies on the board. But here's the weakness that House Stark has. Their capital, Winterfell, can be attacked from the west and the east by Baratheon and Greyjoy. The two kingdoms, the two houses with the most powerful navies in the game, can come up on the flanks of Stark and assault Winterfell from both sides if they really wanted to. Well, Stark can deal with this if they could just have enough time to muster. Once they capture all of these barrels and start farming a lot of these crown tokens, they can contend with these two powers, but very often they don't have that kind of time. So as a result, Stark needs to improvise. And one of these improvisions would be to push south and attack Greyjoy. Maybe not even push south and attack Greyjoy, but simply just move its army to Moat Cailin and hold this choke point right here to keep Greyjoy from coming up north and attacking Winterfell. Moat Cailin is the perfect buffer zone. It's the only buffer zone. It's literally a choke point. But as long as Stark remains here, they can put pressure on Greyjoy. And Greyjoy has a powerful navy in Iron Man's Bay. They need to keep this navy here in Iron Man's Bay because they need to support their troops on the ground. So these coastal territories that Greyjoy has, this one fleet right here provides the most support for all of these coastal territories. And if Stark can just put pressure on Greyjoy, then they can keep Greyjoy's fleet in Iron Man's Bay, pinning Greyjoy down, which gives it time to contend with Baratheon. Baratheon, having the other most powerful navy in the game, has a trump card. If you are being supported in this combat, that combat strength of all non-Baratheon ships is reduced to 0. So let's say that Baratheon is here in the Narrow Sea and Stark attacks them. And if Baratheon has a support order here, they can support their ships from here. And all non-Baratheon ships will be reduced to 0 strength, making it significantly harder for Baratheon to win the game there. This is why Stark needs to send its fleet into the Narrow Sea as soon as possible. Because if they can get their ships into the Narrow Sea before Baratheon attacks, Baratheon will not be able to move north supported. In other words, Baratheon has no choice but to move north unsupported if they don't make it to the Narrow Sea first. So, however, Baratheon moves first on the Iron Throne track. So, realistically speaking, they can move their fleet up before Stark can. But if Stark attacks on the same round, maybe there's a chance of them winning out the battle and occupying the Narrow Sea. Very often you won't see Baratheon move north until like round 2 or 3, because Baratheon will be too busy using its navy to help their troops, support their troops in taking King's Landing. So occupying the Narrow Sea is not that hard. If I was to occupy the Narrow Sea, personally, I would have a ship in White Harbor and have a ship in the Shivering Sea. So as a result, I won't have to worry about stacking 3 different ships into one sector and then using up a whole army of 3 when I can easily just have that army on land. I'll have a ship here in White Harbor. I'll have a ship back here in the Shivering Sea, and both of them can just support the ship in the Narrow Sea. Essentially, I can save my armies and have a bigger troop capacity if I just did things this way. Overall, I would recommend 3 ships on this side, 2 ships on this side. Because, once again, Greyjoy has no choice but to contend with Stark on land. So that's the setup that I would work with right there. Once again, fielding all these armies takes a lot of resources, takes a lot of supply. So that's why Stark has to make sure they get these before the mid-game. Stark typically cannot reach 7 castles without taking out Greyjoy or Baratheon. But a 5 or 6 castles is very doable. Stark has a very unique set of house cards because they're very defensive and very atrocious. For example, Sir Roderick Castle. These 2 castle icons, that's 2 defenses. So like hypothetically, if Greyjoy was to attack and use a card that had 2 sword icons, 2 sword icons meaning 2 casualties inflicted on the enemy. If Stark was to play this card right here, these 2 castles would block both of those swords. So that's a very defensive card despite how weak it is. The Blackfish. You do not take casualties in this combat from house card abilities, combat icons, or Tide of Battle cards. So under any circumstances, you will not lose any soldiers if you play the Blackfish. And typically, whenever people play the Blackfish, they play it for losing battles. Catelyn Stark is the most defensive card in the game. If you have a defense order token in the embattled area, its value is doubled. So let's just say you really, really need to defend Moat Cailin. So you place a defense order there, but not just a defense order, a 2 times defense order. If you play Catelyn Stark, that 2 times defense order goes up to 4 because it's doubled. So that's a very, very defensible position if you want to defend the moat. But that's not all Stark comes to the table with. This right here is Stark's greatest combination. Eddard Stark is House Stark's most powerful card. Whenever you want to go on in offensive and you want to really, really win battles, play Eddard Stark. 4+ points alone. Robb Stark is almost as strong as his father, but he's slightly weaker and doesn't have any sword icons, so he can't kill units. However, if you do win combat, you may choose the area to which your opponent retreats. So, if Greyjoy was to attack into Moat Cailin, and let's say that they won, House Stark can choose which territory you retreat to. So they're going to say retreat to the Twins, and that leaves Seaguard wide open, assuming Stark has a march order there. Anyway, Gratian Umber, he's strong too, because 2 is relatively nice, and he has a sword icon, but let's be honest, this combination, he's just kind of an extra. This right here is the main combination. Roose Bolton. If you lose combat, return your entire house card pile to your hand. So if you really want to go on the offensive, all you have to do is play your strongest cards. And then when they're discarded, you could finally just play this card right here for if you want to lose a battle. So if you know you're going to lose a battle, you can save him for anticipation of that battle that you're going to lose. And when you do lose, hopefully if you do lose, your entire house card pile gets returned to your hand. And then you could essentially just recycle your strongest cards over and over and over again and just keep playing him after they're gone. This is very good for the Starks if they want to be offensive. As to where all the other houses have to discard their house cards into the discard pile, and they don't get them back until they use up every last one of their house cards. So, Stark has a little cheat code to their decks. Once Stark musters all of its power in the north, they can move south, no problem. 1, 2, 3 barrels. Just 3 barrels alone, right here. Right here. You can field an army of 3, and another army of 2, and another army of 2, and another army of 2. That's a lot. And if Stark occupies the Vale, and they will be able to because they occupy the Narrow Sea, they can easily just cross over whenever they want to. They can cross over from White Harbor. They can cross over from Winterfell. They literally just have to hold these 2 sea zones. Put pressure on Greyjoy. Muster your forces. Watch out for Baratheon, and form an alliance with House Martell, who is all the way on the other side of the board. House Tyrell and House Greyjoy are the only 2 houses that are above you on the fiefdom's track. Greyjoy is a problem, but House Tyrell is not. House Tyrell is all the way over there, so you don't have to worry about that. All the other houses, you're stronger than them. All the other houses are behind you. Stark has the ability to put down 3 Star Orders because they're high up on the King's Court track, giving them a lot of mobility and power. Right there. And then, if you look at the Iron Throne influence track, Stark is ahead of most of the other houses. They're 3rd place. Stark is in a very good position. Just don't get stunted early in the game. Build up your momentum and do not be in a rush to get south.